Good morning. We welcome you this Wednesday morning of Holy Week as we continue journeying with Jesus. And this morning our journey brings us to the beginning of Jesus' trial as he faces the first courtroom before the Sanhedrin court. And the question that we think about this morning is that which he is asked by Caiaphas the high priest. Are you the Christ? Now, reading this morning is taken from Matthew 26, verses 57 to 68. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus, so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God." "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. "But I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" "He is worthy of death," they answered. Then they spat in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, Christ. Who hit you?" And so we're brought into this courtroom scene this morning. And many of us may never have been in a real courtroom, but probably most of us have had the opportunity to be brought into a courtroom through the legal and courtroom dramas that we see on television. And these dramas remain some of the most popular TV programs around, as they have done for many years. And I was reading an article that gave 3 reasons as to why they felt that these dramas were so popular. The first was that they make you think. They provide you with some intellectual stimulation. They get your mind thinking about who really did it, what's going to happen, what's going to be the conclusion of this case. The second reason was that you can drop in and drop out of these dramas. Each case stands alone, and so you don't need to give a commitment to watching every program. And the third was that everybody enjoys the hero's journey. People enjoy seeing the underdog getting the right help and the hero saving the day at the end by winning the court case. And I want us to take these 3 points this morning as we think about the courtroom that Jesus faced. So the first was that it makes people think. And as we think about this passage and the passages that we have been reading up until this point and thinking about Jesus travelling into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday up to now, how much has he made people think? Jesus came into Jerusalem and straight away started questioning and changing people's views and how they were thinking. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law, of course, did not like this change that Jesus was bringing about to people's thinking. They didn't want them to think. They wanted them to follow and to keep the laws that they had set in place. And so they often questioned Jesus and tried to trip him up. And one day, perhaps in frustration, they said, "Well, what is the most important law then?" And Jesus in Matthew chapter 22, verses 34 to 40 tells them and us what the most important thinking we need to have is. He said the most important laws are to love God and to love your neighbour. And as we face these uncertain times at the moment, aren't those the two most important things that we can think? That we can love God and we can love our neighbour. And the second point was that people enjoy these dramas because you don't have to give maybe the weekly commitment that you would if you were watching a soap or something like that. You can just drop in and watch a case and then maybe watch another one in a couple of weeks' time. And if we think about dropping in and dropping out for Jesus at this time as he stood in this trial, how much was he feeling that people had dropped out on him? His friends had scattered as he was arrested and taken away from the garden. His friends were scared. They left, they hid. Some of them came close but stayed back, like Peter that we hear about in this passage, unsure what was going to happen. And some of his friends dropped out completely at this time. And for us, do we drop out sometimes as we journey with Jesus? Do we sometimes have other things going on or too much to think about? Do we drop in on a Sunday and focus on him for that day, but then drop out for the rest of the week? And Jesus wants us to drop in. He wants us to stay with him and to draw close to him, particularly when we're facing difficulties, as many of us are at this time. And the final point was that people enjoy the hero's journey. They enjoy seeing the triumph of the right person at the right time. And for Jesus' friends at this time, that was what they were waiting for. They were waiting for their hero to come to the fore. They perhaps thought this trial would collapse, that Jesus would overthrow it all and take over. And of course, we know the full story, and we know that Jesus was indeed the hero in the end. But for the people at the time, for his followers and friends standing around, they maybe couldn't see that this hero was coming just yet. They were still waiting for their hero to take charge. And perhaps Jesus, in his human form, with those human emotions, was feeling that this journey wasn't going the right way for him either. He wasn't taking over as the hero just yet in this situation. But as Jesus is questioned and he is asked, "Are you the Christ?" he keeps his focus on his Father as he answers, "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied, "but I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." As Max Lucado puts it in his book, And the Angels Were Silent, while surrounded by enemies, he kept his mind on his Father. This hero knew his journey wasn't quite over yet, but he knew that his Father was going to be the one who would help him to get there. And that is what we need to do this morning as well. We need to keep our mind fixed on God. As it tells us in Hebrews 13 verse 5, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." And so, as we face a trial of a different kind at this time, as our whole country experiences trials like never perhaps before, we need to keep our mind fixed on God, fixed on the one who can help us, who can do all things. "Are you the Christ?" they asked him. And thankfully and joyfully we can know that he is the Christ, and we can keep our mind fixed on him and his Father to help us in all times and in all circumstances.